I'm Morgan, and today I'm excited to share my thoughts on episodes 1 through 3 of the Queen's Gambit Netflix series. So I've been watching this series with my significant other. I was the one who was like, we should watch this, because I'd seen some clips of the show on, I think it was like YouTube, and it looked really good to me. I was really intrigued by the character of Beth, and I love this character so much. She reminds me kind of like, not in the way that she's good at math or the way that she's good at chess, but she reminds me of me just in the way that it's like she really, really struggles socially, and like the amount of eye contact that she makes, it's like she gives way too much eye contact. Like she's always staring into people's souls or like staring into the camera. Like she gives way too much, way too intense eye contact. And I think it's interesting, like, she's completely the opposite of me in terms of, like, her mannerisms, where it's, like, I'm someone who's, like, I talk with my hands a lot, like, I'm very exaggerated with my facial expressions, and she is the complete and total inverse of that, where it's, like, she's very, stoic looking, like, she's not very expressive at all, like, she's always, like, it feels like she's trying to take up very little space, and I think that, like, honestly, that could be read as, like, a trauma type response, but to me, I'm like, I think this girl is neurodiverse. Like, I think this is neurodiverse representation. Like, she reminds me a lot of, I'd say, like, other autistic people. Just, like, it feels like she has, just, like, she is autistic. Like, that's just the vibe that I get from her, from, like, just the way that she interacts with the world and other people. Like, that's the vibe that I get. And I really think that the show tackles a lot of really difficult issues. Like, Beth comes from an orphanage where, like, one thing I said to my significant other is, like, hey, I don't know, like, I think this is one of the first times I picked up on this, but, like, it feels like one of the reasons to me that sometimes, like, religious organizations run orphanages is, like, maybe they're trying to seek converts. Like, I this is, like, one of the first times I picked up on the fact that it's, like, there seems to be, like, a double reason why religious organizations, like, would run things like adoption centers and orphanages and, like, be involved in things like foster care. It's, like, it's not just, for charity reasons. It seems to be, like, so they can indoctrinate kids into their worldview. Because I noticed, like the choice of movie that they were watching at one point, when I think Beth sneaks out to go do, sate her addiction, that it's, like, one of those where it's, like, okay, that's not just, like, old-timey vintage movie. It's, like, that's specifically a religious film. They're choosing to do, like, religious themed stuff in their free time, and it's, like, this really feels like they're trying to indoctrinate the children into their worldview, and so, yeah, I picked up on that. It's, like, I don't think this is just, they're choosing this because that's retro, and that's, like, in that time period, like, Christianity just infiltrates the culture. It feels like they're literally, like, trying to indoctrinate the children into that worldview, which is something that's, like, I hadn't really picked up on that before, but I don't know, I got to thinking about that, and, yeah, I really, speaking of Beth sneaking out to sate her addiction, it's, like, I think the show touches on some very, very deep topics, like, the fact that, Beth as a character was given, I think it's, like, a tranquilizer type drug, like, she's given drugs that it's, like, to the best of my knowledge, like, she wasn't, inspected by a doctor who says, you should take this. It's, like, she was given drugs, I think, to kind of, like, control her behavior without necessarily needing those, or at least we don't see a doctor inspect her and say, here, you need to be taking this for this reason. And I think that's a very deep topic for a lot of reasons. The first of which is that, hey, there were oftentimes, like, a history of experimenting on vulnerable populations in that time period. For instance, I guess this is more like of a state school that was geared towards people with disabilities, but there was one that was, like, doing hepatitis experiments on children, and so it's, like, yeah, experimenting on children, that sounds about right for that time period, unfortunately. And also just, like, the unnecessary medication of people to kind of like control their behavior. Like, that's an issue that I think is still ongoing to this day, actually. For instance, like, if you've ever talked to adults on the autism spectrum who were diagnosed in childhood, a lot of us were given things that were not actually FDA approved for anything related to autism, to try and like control our behavior, like, but essentially that were bunk cures that were like pushed. Like, I'm a survivor of chelation therapy, which does not fucking work for autism, but that was something that I'd say, unscrupulous doctor was willing to prescribe when I was younger, which is, I'd say, like, why Beth, I think also, like, her story is so important. It's like, yeah, there are a lot of us who were given things that were meant to control behavior but weren't actually approved for our conditions by the FDA. So, yeah, I don't know, it's kind of like deep dark there, but it's like, yeah, the drugging of children to try and change their behavior is a major issue that still happens in the 21st century. And so I really like to see that represented in the media. And also, like, I think it's interesting to see, like, some of the, like, sometimes drugs that are given can be, like, habit inducing. Like, we see that she goes from being prescribed that one medication to, like, going off of it cold turkey, and like her body has a lot of trouble coping with that. Like, she really struggles due to a medication that she'd been prescribed. And it's like, yeah, I think like anyone who's been given like psychiatric medications like knows, like, if you have to go off of them, like, you're supposed to talk to your doctor about that, because there are sometimes medications where it's like, if you quit them cold turkey, that can be dangerous. So, like, those are things where it's like doctors need to come up with a plan. If you're quitting those, like, you need to talk to a doctor about that. Whereas, like, because she kind of went off cold turkey, it's like, wow, she really, really struggled with that. And then, yeah, I feel bad for this character, but it's like, oh, this is touching on some really deep societal problems. Like, I think this show is really thought-provoking in that way, and I think it has like a lot of representation. And I think it's also interesting, like, Beth being the only woman in a very male-dominated type of field or environment. It's like, wow, yeah, that's how I feel playing Civ 3, except I'm not like a savant at it. Like, I'm not good at it per se. How do I put this? Like, in the nicest possible way, there aren't a lot of Civ players, so it's not that hard to be one of the top 100 in the world in Civ 3. Because there really ain't that many players in it. But it's like, I'm one of the only women in the entire Civ community, and Civ 3 community. And so it's like, yeah, I totally get what it's like to be like a fish out of water in that scenario, where it's like, I have an interest, or like a special interest in something that like not a lot of other women play. And it's like, wow, yeah, vibes. I get I get how Beth feels. Being essentially one of the only girls. So it's always a little bit awkward, because it's like, I like how she like immediately kind of struck up a camaraderie in that first tournament she was in with that other girl. Like, it's like, like for Beth, the camaraderie, like she's not really a very social person, but it's like she just seemed to automatically like gravitate towards the other girl. And it's like, yeah, that's how women, when it's like there are only 2 women in the freaking community, like sometimes that sort of thing happens, where it's like, essentially, if you're a minority, like sometimes you'll just gravitate towards other minorities, whether it's like because you're a woman, or because you're disabled, or because of like some other immutable characteristic. Like, sometimes, like, if you're the only one who's like different, it's like, oh, thank God there's someone else who's like me. And also just like all the male attention that Beth gets, it's like, yeah, it feels sometimes like being tokenized, just to be like, I don't know, like sometimes if you're the only girl, it feels a little bit tokenizing. And like other times, so it's like everyone just accepts you, but then there are times where it's like, okay, it feels like you're an oddity at first, or like a circus show. I'm like, oh, look, this person's a girl, let's go, like, wow, let's go pay attention to that. Like, I don't know, it's sometimes dehumanizing to be the only girl, like, in a male-dominated activity. So, like, I think the show did a good job of capturing that. And also there was that one reporter who, oh my god, I want to talk about that experience that Beth had with that reporter who was, like, in her room, like, asking her all these weird questions about, like, I don't know, was, like, trying to be almost, like, Freudian about the king and the queen piece, and it's, like, what? But it's, like, reporters sometimes are like that. Like, I had an absolute trash experience. Okay, I should be more diplomatic. But I had an experience many years ago where I was essentially being interviewed for, I thought it was a piece about, like, a theater program that I was involved with. And, like, that's what I was told. It was supposed to be about, like, this theater program that I was involved with. And the interviewer ended up making the entire fucking piece about my autism, and it's like, I don't think I ever mentioned that I was autistic to her, so she probably, I mean, she either heard that from, like, either corresponding with my mother, because I think I was a minor at the time that the piece was written, or else, the theater teacher who, like, got her involved with me, but it's just like, yeah, I know how Beth feels. Where it's like the reporter is making the entire piece about, like, how she's a woman chess player, and it's like, yeah, I know that feeling exactly. I had an experience where someone made an entire piece about me being about, like, my autism, when it's like, I thought it was supposed to be about the theater show that I was involved with. So, like, yeah, that is a very painful experience for me, and it's like, yeah, I understand what Beth's going through firsthand there. That sort of betrayal and tokenization and kind of, like, being reduced entirely to an immutable characteristic instead of, you know, the thing that the article's supposed to be about, that you're supposed to be, like, passionate for. Like, for me, like, I was always very passionate about theater, and it's like, Beth, like, her entire world, like, what she wants to do is chess. Like, that's her passion. That's what drives her. And so, like, yeah, just I felt bad for Beth. Like, she genuinely likes chess. That's something that she enjoys. And then there are other people who are like, oh my god, you're a woman who plays chess. How noteworthy. And it's like, she likes chess. She wants to play chess. And I also feel bad about the fact that it's like, when she's growing up at the orphanage, it's like, she clearly has a gift that isn't being nurtured. Like, it feels like people are trying to fit her into this one little box of, like, oh, you gotta be, like, what society wants you to be, instead of realizing that it's like, she has skill for chess. Like, she could be an amazing chess player if she's only given, like, the training, the resources to pursue that. Which I think is also, like, an issue in society, where so often, like, there are people who maybe don't fit into society's mold of what someone in their role is supposed to be, but who are exceptionally skilled at something or other, and that skill just isn't nurtured. And so we miss out on people who would be truly excellent at this or that sort of skill because of the way that society just puts people into little boxes. I know, like, I think that's also, like, a feminist idea of, like, there were probably a lot of, you know, skilled women over the centuries who it's like they, because of society's expectations of, like, what a woman's role in life is, sometimes missed out on the training to really pursue something that they were skilled at or would have been skilled at and were passionate about. So it's like, that is, I think, a deep, true-to-life issue that is very realistically represented in Beth's childhood, where it's like she was skilled at chess. She had a passion for chess. She had a proclivity towards chess, but that wasn't nurtured until she's older, and so she missed out on additional training that she could have otherwise had. She could have probably been even better at a younger age if she'd just been given the appropriate levels of training. So, yeah, I wanted to talk about that. So I really love this show so far. I think it touches on a lot of deep societal issues, like sexism, and, like, how sometimes or like, what's the word, organizations or institutions that are meant to help people, like orphanages, sometimes turn out to not be like that. And also like bullying too, where it's like Beth gets mistreated by the other girls at her school until it's like, oh, she's famous, she's in all these little newspapers and stuff, and it's like, these people aren't her friends. They just it's like, I feel like that's an experience that a lot of women have, where it's like, if you're the odd one out and you don't fit in socially, it's like, it's really hard to make friends. And sometimes it's like, sometimes other girls, it's like, you just are expected to be friends with them because they also have vaginas, but you don't actually have anything in common with them. And so it's like, I don't know, it's something that I definitely have experienced in my life, where it's like, oftentimes I find myself hanging out with men, like, not always, but oftentimes I find myself hanging out with men just because it's like, we have shared interests. Like, I don't know, like, I guess an example is, again, when I play, like, multiplayer Civ, like, the people who I hang out with are primarily guys, because that's just who else is in the community. And I'd say, like, theater's the opposite, where, like, it's more so, like, theater people tend to be women, or LGBTQI+, and sometimes both. Sometimes both. But yeah, I don't think there's an issue of, like, it can be really lonely being a woman who, like, doesn't really fit the mold, who is different. So, like, I feel like I relate a lot to Beth's struggles as a neurodiverse woman. So I really, really, really love The Queen's Gambit so far. I think it's excellent. I do feel bad for Beth. Like, I feel bad for Beth. Like, she's gone through a lot of horrible things in her life. And also, like, I feel bad about the fact that it's like, she's clearly developing, like, not only does she have the issue where it's like, she's kind of like dependent on that one medication that she was prescribed in childhood, but she's also like developing, like, it seems like an alcohol dependency too. So it's like, it feels like she's being set up to have like a really, really hard life, like continually things still going wrong for her. And I feel bad too about the fact that it's like, yeah, she got adopted by this one person, but if, like, how do I put this? Because her stepmother's has been left, it's like, her situation is precarious, because apparently it seems like if the couple are divorced, then there's the risk that she gets sent back to the home, because, I mean, that's, I'd say, a greater societal issue of, like, sometimes adoption agencies just, like, refusing to give kids to good homes because the parents are, like, not fitting the mold of how society expects parents to be. Like, I know there's still, like, issues where, I think it varies depending on where you live, but, like, where sometimes, like, kids won't be adopted out to, like, happy, loving gay couples, because society's rubbish like that sometimes, and would rather a kid not go to a happy home because the parents are gay because of bigotry, or like, homophobia. And, like, that's an issue. I think that's an issue that continues on to this day in some jurisdictions. So yeah, I think the show touches on so many deep topics. And I'd say it's got, like, good cinematography, really good actors. Oh, I love Jolene as a character. Jolene's so much fun. I love Jolene. I want to see more of her. Like, I really hope we see more of Jolene, and more of the janitor too. And good acting, really good, like, I love, like, the costume design, because it feels very authentic to, I'd say, what I imagine the era is. Like, nothing really drives me out of it, like, takes me out of the immersion. So yeah, and really good writing, honestly, like, excellent, seamless writing. So yeah, those are my thoughts so far. I hope that this video inspires you maybe to check out different media than you otherwise might have checked out, or to just be more aware of the struggles that other people face in this world. And I hope you have a great day. Bye!